Mark and Evelyn Walker were the kind of couple everyone admired, until a single slip revealed a 25-year betrayal that shattered everything he thought he knew. What began as a picture-perfect marriage slowly unraveled into a web of deception, leading to a discovery so devastating it came just moments too late. This is the chilling true crime story of love, lies, and the cost of secrets kept in silence. In a quiet suburb of Carmel, Indiana, nestled among maple-lined streets and well-tended lawns, Mark and Evelyn Walker lived what most would describe as the American dream. Their two-story colonial house, always freshly painted with red shutters and a tidy front garden, looked like a picture from a real estate magazine. Neighbors waved to them in the mornings. Children played near their driveway in the evenings. From the outside, their life seemed not just normal but enviable. Mark, a dedicated insurance analyst, was the kind of man who lived by schedules, principles, and quiet routines. He was punctual, responsible, and unwavering in his commitment to his family. He believed in hard work, Sunday dinners, and doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. Each morning he brewed his coffee the same way and read the same newspaper column. He never missed a mortgage payment, and he was the kind of husband who remembered anniversaries and brought home flowers just because. Evelyn, by contrast, had a charm that sparkled in every room she entered. She was warm, quick with compliments, and always seemed to know what others needed before they even asked. She had once dreamed of becoming a painter, but those dreams shifted into homemaking after the birth of their children. Over time, she became a fixture in the community, organizing bake sales, volunteering at the church, and later becoming a yoga instructor once the kids were in high school. She was known for her radiant smile, her empathy, and her energy. People often said Evelyn was the heart of the neighborhood. To the outside world, the Walkers had everything: two healthy children who went on to attend good colleges, summer vacations to the Carolinas, a golden retriever named Lucky, and a marriage that looked effortless. No loud arguments, no public complaints, no visible signs of trouble. Friends admired them, some even envied them. Mark and Evelyn were seen as a rare example of enduring love in a world where relationships often crumbled under pressure. But behind their picturesque life was a reality much harder to see. Mark worked long hours, often commuting over an hour to Indianapolis, especially in the early years. He told himself it was to provide better opportunities for the family, and Evelyn always seemed to understand. They rarely fought, but they also rarely talked about anything real. Over time, their conversations had become surface level. What to buy for dinner when the next bill was due, whether the gutters needed cleaning. Love hadn't vanished, but it had slowly hardened into something more practical than passionate. Evelyn was always there, smiling, managing the house, supporting the kids. But she seemed to be living in a different rhythm, one that Mark couldn't quite keep up with. She took up yoga and art classes, then started volunteering more, sometimes spending whole weekends away for retreats. Mark, never suspicious, believed she needed time for herself. After all, she had given so much for the family. If she wanted space, she had earned it. What Mark didn't see, what he couldn't even imagine, was that Evelyn was building another life, one that didn't include him. Her smiles remained, her affection never completely disappeared, and she never made a scene. That was the genius of it. Her deception was not hidden in the shadows. It lived right there in the daylight, masked by domestic warmth and the appearance of normalcy. For 25 years, Mark woke up next to the same woman, kissed her goodbye, and believed he knew her. He had no reason to question the life they shared, and Evelyn made sure of that. Because the greatest lies are often the ones that look most like the truth, and the most dangerous secrets aren't shouted. They were whispered so quietly that no one hears them until it is far too late. Evelyn Walker's second life began with a coincidence that seemed innocent at first. In the summer of 1998, she attended her high school reunion in Evansville, driving down alone while Mark stayed home with the children. It was there that she ran into Darren Cole, an old boyfriend she hadn't seen in over a decade. He was older now, with streaks of gray in his beard and eyes that still held the same defiant spark she remembered from their teenage years. He was a far cry from the men who filled Evelyn's daily life. He didn't wear a tie, didn't talk about property taxes, and didn't ask how the garden was growing. He talked about motorcycles, road trips, and how he never got tied down. For Evelyn, it felt like stepping into another world. Their conversation that night was brief but electric. Afterward, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Weeks passed, then a letter arrived. Darren had looked her up and sent a handwritten note, just a few lines long but filled with familiarity. She wrote back. Slowly, letters turned into emails, emails into phone calls, and by the following spring, Evelyn was driving out of town under the pretense of attending a wellness seminar. In reality, she was meeting Darren at a motel on the edge of a small town 2 hours away. That was the beginning. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was deliberate, calculated, and quiet. Evelyn created a system. Wednesdays became her yoga days, and Saturdays were her volunteer shifts at the animal shelter. But she wasn't doing downward dog or feeding kittens. She was with Darren, hidden away from the life she'd built with Mark. Darren never asked her to leave her husband. He didn't want marriage or children. That was part of what made it easy for Evelyn. He offered her freedom without pressure, intimacy without obligation. With him, she didn't have to be the perfect wife or the responsible mother. She could simply be Evelyn, imperfect, spontaneous, and alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. To keep her secret, Evelyn developed skills she never thought she'd use. She paid for motel rooms in cash. She used a separate prepaid phone which she kept locked in the glove compartment of her car. She created fake email addresses and even set up a secret bank account under her maiden name. Everything was meticulously planned. She was careful, always one step ahead of suspicion. Her affair with Darren stretched from months into years, then into decades. Seasons changed. Her children grew up and left for college. Mark got a promotion, they renovated the kitchen. But Evelyn's routine never wavered. Her secret life existed in the same timeline as her public one, the two running parallel, but never intersecting. And somehow she made it work. She never missed a family event, never forgot a birthday, and never let Mark feel ignored. If anything, her attention to their home life improved. Mark thought she was simply rediscovering herself. He even felt guilty for all the years he spent working late and missing moments with her. He started making more time for her, suggesting date nights and weekend getaways. Evelyn always had a reason to say no. She'd smile, kiss his cheek, and tell him next weekend. It always sounded so loving, so convincing. There were moments when Evelyn considered ending it, when guilt crept in during quiet mornings or long drives. But Darren always knew the right things to say. He'd remind her that life was short, that everyone deserved happiness, that no one was really hurt if no one found out. And Evelyn wanted to believe that. So she did. 25 years passed. 25 years of secrets hidden behind smiles, routines, and family portraits. Evelyn became a master of duality, living one life in public and another in the shadows. And as far as she knew, Mark never suspected a thing. Mark Walker's early retirement in the spring of 2022 was not something he had planned. A fall from a ladder while cleaning the gutters left him with a fractured hip and a long recovery. His employer encouraged him to take the pension early, and after decades of work, Mark reluctantly agreed. Suddenly, he found himself at home with long stretches of empty hours and a restlessness he couldn't shake. At first, he tried to fill the time with gardening, fixing small things around the house and reading books he'd always meant to get to. But something felt off. The structure of his days, once so predictable, had changed, and in the quiet, he began to notice small things he'd never paid attention to before. It started with Evelyn's phone. She seemed oddly protective of it, always keeping it face down, never leaving it unattended. She had never been that way before. Mark brushed it off as a sign of the times. Everyone was more attached to their phones nowadays. But then he noticed her leaving the room when she took calls. Sometimes she'd step out onto the back porch or even drive somewhere else to talk without disturbing him. It seemed unnecessary, but again, he said nothing. Then there was the mileage on her car. One day, while washing it in the driveway, he glanced at the odometer. Evelyn had told him she only drove to her yoga studio and the animal shelter, both less than 10 miles away. But the numbers didn't match the story. She was driving far more than she claimed. Mark didn't say anything, but the question lodged itself in his mind and stayed there. The moment things truly shifted was when a receipt fluttered out of Evelyn's purse one evening while she was getting ready for bed. Mark picked it up without thinking. It was for a motel off Route 37, dated the previous Wednesday. The room was paid for in cash. Evelyn had told him she'd been at a yoga workshop that afternoon. Something didn't add up. Mark didn't accuse her. He didn't even ask about the receipt. Instead, he quietly placed it in a folder and tucked it away in the back of his desk drawer. In the following weeks, he began to observe more closely. He noted what Evelyn wore on Wednesdays and Saturdays. He checked the gas gauge when she left and when she returned. He watched her pack a small gym bag each time, one that he never saw her use at home. He began following her, once, then twice. He kept his distance, driving a few cars behind. The first time, she drove to a strip of highway motels in a neighboring town. Mark watched from his car as a man approached her vehicle, and they walked in together. The second time, it was the same routine. Mark took photos, not out of vengeance, but out of disbelief. He needed proof that what he was seeing was real. After that, Mark began collecting evidence, quietly, methodically. He found the prepaid phone she had hidden in the glove compartment. He listened to voicemail messages, read texts. He set up a voice recorder under the driver's seat of her car, and began to hear snippets of conversations, plans, laughter that wasn't meant for him. There were references to a place up north, mentions of a future he was not a part of. Each discovery brought a new layer of pain, but also a strange clarity. Mark had never thought of himself as someone who could be deceived. He was careful, thoughtful, and trusted the life he had built. Yet piece by piece it was unraveling in front of him. For 6 months Mark lived in silence, collecting fragments of a truth he never imagined. He went about his daily life like nothing had changed, greeting Evelyn in the mornings, making small talk over dinner, pretending he was still the man she loved. But inside he was breaking one revelation at a time. By the time April arrived, Mark Walker was ready. After 6 months of secret investigations and silent heartbreak, he had everything he needed. The folder labeled "The Truth" was thick with evidence. Photos of Evelyn and Darren entering motel rooms, phone logs from the burner phone, bank statements from the hidden account in her maiden name, and even printed transcripts from recorded conversations in her car. Each item was neatly labeled, each time stamped. Mark didn't collect them out of hatred or revenge. He needed closure. He needed to understand how the woman he had shared a life with for more than 30 years had become a stranger. He had made an appointment with a divorce attorney 2 weeks earlier. He hadn't told anyone, not their children, not a single friend. The plan was simple: confront Evelyn, present the evidence, walk away with dignity. No screaming, no begging for answers. Just the truth delivered plainly. He rehearsed what he would say, imagining her reactions, imagining the silence that might follow. Even in his pain, he still hoped for an explanation, something to make sense of the betrayal. But the confrontation never came. The night before his planned meeting with Evelyn, The phone rang just after 10 p.m. Mark, already in bed, answered with a groggy hello. The voice on the other end was urgent and unfamiliar. Evelyn had been in a car accident. It happened on a slick stretch of road just outside Bloomington, where a sharp curve and sudden rain had turned deadly. Her vehicle had spun out, crashing into a guardrail at high speed. She died on impact. Mark dropped the phone. At the hospital, everything was procedural and cold. They asked for identification, gave him her belongings in a plastic bag, and handed him a form to sign. Inside the bag was her wallet, her wedding ring, and her phone. Not the burner phone, but the one he had known. It was locked with a passcode he had never seen. He turned it over in his hands, realizing this object held the last digital traces of a woman he would now never truly understand. The days that followed blurred into one another. Calls to the children, arrangements for the funeral, casseroles left on the porch by neighbors offering condolences for a tragedy they couldn't comprehend. Mark moved through it all like a shadow of himself, doing what was necessary, numb and quiet. Everyone told him Evelyn's death was a terrible accident. No one knew about the folder in his desk drawer. No one knew about Darren. Mark didn't tell them. Evelyn was buried on a warm spring morning, her casket lowered into the earth under a cloudless sky. Mark stood beside his children, accepting hugs and whispered prayers. But his mind was elsewhere. All he could think about were the Wednesdays and Saturdays she'd spent with someone else, the 25 years of deception, the confrontation he had prepared for and never got to have. In the days after the funeral, Mark opened the folder again. Not to relive the pain, but to remind himself it was real, that he hadn't imagined it all. The photographs, the receipts, the messages, they were all still there, cruel reminders of what he never saw coming. He also tried in vain to unlock her phone. He watched videos on bypassing passcodes, searched online for clues, but nothing worked. It remained a sealed box of secrets, and now, it always would be. Evelyn's story ended before she could face what she had done. And for Mark, that lack of closure became its own kind of torment. He had uncovered the truth, but the person who owed him answers was gone. What remained was a silence deeper than any he had ever known. A silence filled with all the things she never said, and all the lies he never expected to hear. In the months following Evelyn's death, Mark Walker tried to rebuild some version of his life, though nothing felt familiar anymore. The routines he once found comfort in now felt hollow. He made coffee each morning like he always had, but it tasted different. The house, once full of warmth and quiet laughter, felt cold, like a museum of someone else's life. Her clothes still hung in the closet, her scent lingered on the pillows, and her emails still arrived. Automated updates from community groups, promotional yoga retreats, reminders of a life that had gone on without him truly in it. He didn't know what to do with the folder of evidence. He kept it hidden in his desk, untouched since the day after her funeral. It seemed cruel to throw it away, but unbearable to look at. The truth it contained no longer had a purpose. Evelyn was gone, and with her went any chance of understanding why she had chosen to live two lives. Mark was left with only theories and shadows. Then, in late July, a letter arrived. It came in a manila envelope from a law firm in northern Michigan, one Mark had never heard of. He almost tossed it aside, thinking it was a clerical error. But when he opened it, he froze. Inside was a cover letter from an attorney and a copy of a recently updated will. The name at the top was Darren Cole. Mark read it twice, then a third time. Darren had passed away just weeks after Evelyn's accident, the result of a heroin overdose in a motel outside of Traverse City. His will included instructions that a select number of individuals be contacted in the event of his death. Evelyn was listed as one. So was Mark. Also enclosed was a set of keys, along with an address and the simple message, She wanted to start over here. Haunted by the curiosity, Mark drove to Michigan. He told no one. The address led him to a small cottage on a quiet lake, surrounded by pine trees and silence. It was beautiful in a way that made his stomach turn. The house was modest but cozy. White walls, simple decor, untouched furniture, as if waiting for someone who would never arrive. Inside, the truth revealed itself in brutal clarity. On the kitchen table, Mark found framed photographs of Evelyn and Darren smiling beside the lake, Evelyn holding a glass of wine, barefoot on the deck. In one, Darren had his arm around her, and she looked happier than Mark had seen her in years. In a drawer, he discovered handwritten journals, pages filled with Evelyn's thoughts, her fears, her hopes for a life that didn't include Mark or their children. She wrote about her dreams of moving away quietly, starting fresh with Darren, finally choosing happiness after years of pretending. There were entries about how much guilt she carried, but how she believed she deserved love in whatever form she could find it. She hadn't planned to hurt Mark. She simply couldn't live the lie any longer. Mark sat in the middle of the empty cottage and tried to cry, but nothing came. He wasn't angry anymore, not really. What he felt was something deeper, a sense of erasure, as if the life he thought he had lived had been rewritten in front of him. All those years he thought he was part of a story, but he had only been a chapter in someone else's book. He locked the door on his way out and left the keys in the mailbox. When he returned to Indiana, he boxed up Evelyn's belongings and donated them to charity. He never told his children the full story. He didn't see the point. Some truths are too heavy to pass on. Some betrayals don't need witnesses. Mark never remarried. He never returned to the lake house. He simply moved on. Quietly. Alone. Carrying the memory of a life that was never truly his.